Yes, you mentioned that the bones of the dead were not in this shell midden. Were there cemeteries in the way that we think of cemeteries, like the one on the other side of the road?
You know, the burial customs can vary a lot from place to place, but I'm more familiar with the Coos Bay region, but they did have certain areas they would bury people. On Coos Bay, the cemetery tended to be pretty close to the village. So what you'd have is like, you know, big old shell midden and the houses close by, and then near that village, that settlement, would be the place where the dead were laid to rest. And something that makes the LC interesting, their burial customs were quite distinctive from those of the Siuslaw, Umpqua, and Coos Bay people. For our people, what they would do is they dig, well, by modern standards, rather shallow grave. They didn't want to dig them too deep. They thought if you dig it too deep, you're just inviting more death. You're leaving room for someone else. That's bad juju, as you can imagine. So, make that, and then they would often build like a little grave house over it, or maybe a canoe over it, or something. The LCs would do kind of surface burials or tree burials, and wouldn't normally bury them, but would be up. Yeah, I think Robert knows a bit more about the LC practices than I do, so.
Like Patty said, there's a lot of variation from place to place, and even within a certain place, depending on the status of the person, the family, and the resources available at the time. When epidemics hit, I'm sure that put a lot of stress on families being able to carry out their family tradition if they were a high status family, and a lot of their family members died within a short period of time. They wouldn't have had enough canoes to do those canoe burials properly, and so you know, there are cemeteries for in-ground interments, there's grave houses, there's canoe burials, cremation. I don't know if it made it this far north on the coast, but down the Rogue River country, that was more for people who had died in warfare, and people who had died a long way from home. You would do cremation and carry what remained back for interment at home. And when you go east of the Cascades, and cremation is a much more general practice as a funerary practice. So, you know, we don't want to get into talking about specific locations of known burials and cemetery areas and those kind of things, because there's people that'll go and see what they can see and stick a shovel in the ground, do it, and that's against the law, and it makes us very upset.
What do you know about early tools and transportation before canoes? Was that too far back?
I'll call on you next, but I've got a question here.
Walport is a Indian burial ground. Downtown, old town.
There's a lot written about that.
Yeah, so many burials were found, and they did excavations of a lot of sidewalks, put new foundations under. There's a lot of stories written when they were building their houses in town that skulls were found, bodies or bones were found in the bushes and stuff with money in the mouth. Kids would take the money out and the different bones. And there's a written story that all the bones were collected at one time and burned.
There's stories out at Yaquinta John Point that there were canoe burials out there, and the canoes were all gathered up and burned when the early settlers took over there. Which, that side of the river, it would have been 1875. On the north side, it would have been 1865 that settlers first came in, based on government acts. But you asked about transportation and tools. There was, of course, canoe travel was a big one. There wasn't much use of horse here until later years. But the Hudson Bay Company brought them in pretty early. And I think some Indian people adopted use of horse, but a lot of foot travel. There was trails everywhere to special places, to resource gathering places, to connecting villages. So there was lots of foot traffic, lots of canoe traffic, and not very much horse until much into the recent period. For tools, there is all different kinds of tools, chisels and adzes for working wood, made out of really tough stone, usually called schist, but sometimes jadeite or nephrite is real tough stone material that polishes up really well and really workable, but holds a good edge for a very long time. Probably even fine-grained basalt worked into adze blades to some extent. Lots of elk antler split or worked down into wedges, and yew wood worked down into wedges, and all kinds of different harpoon points, really ornate ones, and fishing barbs and hooks, and all the tools of the trade, bow making, and different types of arrow tips based on what resource they would be going after. Let's see, lots of basketry technology, fiber and cordage. It's hard to go down the list. There's lots of other different types of tool making too, mortars and pestles made of stone, and some of them pretty ornately decorated. And that's one thing about our traditional arts is a lot of times even the simplest tool, you can tell people just took their time and made it as best as they could, and a lot of times it was very elaborately decorated, and so the people had leisure time. They weren't scrambling to make a living. They weren't spending every waking minute of the day wondering where their next meal was coming from, so they had time to make things beautiful around them. And
so the large timbers in your homes, how did you cut them down?
Fire and wedges.
Why?
and those adzes.
Fire.
Oh, fire.
Yeah,
Oh.
always like burn the base of the tree if you're gonna fell one. Just do a little, hot coals and wedges and just work
Real
at
slow
it.
burning little.
Yeah.
Flint stones to start the fire?
Excuse me?
Flint stones, no matches.
Usually it was sticks, willow
Rubber.
root, or
Okay.
other that were, what do they call them? It was fire making kit,
Cedar, like the
hearth sticks,
cedar
or
bark. I know a lot of times they wouldn't want to start a fire thicket, so they would take a coal and wrap it tightly in something, some
Mussel
cedar
shells or
bark or
what?
something, so that then they could transport that and then bring that kind of back to life instead of
It's a lot
having
of
to
work.
go right from scratch. Because that's a lot of work. Come on, baby, catch. Come on, baby, catch.